No, no. No, you don't. Not today. I've unplugged it. We'll not be having any more unscheduled, unsolicited phone calls or interruptions, my friends. I will be removing this. It's just any of you that thought it wasn't a real telephone. I can assure you it was. Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. Well, I'm going to start with a quote from William Shakespeare today. I am constant as the northern star. Julius Caesar, Act 3, Scene 1. And what could be more appropriate for today's subject? Constant as the northern star is Tamiya, okay? Let's talk about Tamiya. So, we've talked about pretty much most of the other manufacturers. And I will very briefly mention that Tamiya have a bit of an agreement, small agreement sometimes on certain products, with Italeri, and the less said about that the better, so I'm going to get that right out of the way at the beginning. I actually got their 1/48 scale Battle of Britain Mark 1 Hurricane, which I thought was a Tamiya kit, and of course it was the Italeri one, and I am not a fan of Italeri. I won't be doing a separate show about them. Yeah, one of the European manufacturers that frankly always disappoints me. So we're not going to dwell on that. I'm just going to let you know that you won't be seeing a show on that. Today then, Tamiya. This was going to be scripted, as you probably know from my previous trailer, scripted as a general love-in with Tamiya, but that's not the way it's going to be. You have come to expect far more of me than that, of course. So, where to begin then? I have to say to you, first of all, that I was really struggling to decide what to put out, because I've got Airfix and Tamiya are my two biggest, numerically the biggest number of kits I've got built models in my collection, and it's quite a tricky thing to choose between them, because there are so many I don't know where to start really. I could have had another, just as many again, more even, but I thought I would choose like the good, the bad and the ugly. Well, the good, the perfect and the not so perfect. Not so perfect, am I talking about Tamiya? Yes, we'll get into that in a minute. Well, you know, I got that phone call and he said, you know, don't make it look, it's got to be convincing. So you've got to say something bad about the company. Well, not bad about the company, but I've got to find some fault somewhere. So why don't we start with that and get the elephant in the room right out of the way at the very beginning. Now, of course, Tamiya have been going since the late 40s, early 50s, in fact, in different iterations. And they have been a very resilient and remarkable company. Now, a bit like Airfix, that's sort of been going over a very long period as well. And, you know, the two are not really in direct competition with each other. Of course they're not, because they're at different price points, really. And you get what you pay for, and not everybody can afford 100. I don't know what's this now, over £100 for that kit. The Tamiya Tomcat with the launch set. You know, I've got this big Mosquito. They're now retailing around £180. I think it's a ton of money. You know, you've got £90 to £100 for one of these, and so on. So they're not cheap. You know, but everything has a value, and if you pay a lot of money but you get a lot of value, then it's good value. Just like, you know, you buy an Airfix and it's only £20–25 and you get reasonable value for your money. It's all relative. It just comes down to what you want to pay and what you actually want from your models, of course. So Tamiya are not often the beginners kits, not because they're not buildable by beginners, but just because of the pricing, really, I think. However, they have got a remarkable back catalogue. You know, their physical catalogue is worth a couple of programs in itself, really. But I have briefly talked about that in the past. It's worth, though, you know, when I had the phone call, about, you know, don't make us sound completely perfect because nobody will take you seriously. And there's a reason for that, because they haven't been perfect. There are one or two minor issues that are ongoing. And we're going to start with just a remarkable product in a bad way. A product that nobody can understand even to this day. It's not new, thank goodness. It's an older product from the 90s. And I'm going to show you a photograph of it. So I'm going to kick off with that, because we need to get this one out of the way right at the start. So anybody who loves Tamiya, and I've got to be honest, that includes me, always keep in mind that there is no such thing as utter perfection. There's no such thing as perfect companies. Everybody makes mistakes, every company makes mistakes, and every so often, even the greatest companies can really foul things up. And of course, I'm just going to move that very carefully over here. I'm going to zoom you in on this one. I wonder if you can guess what's coming. I know a lot of you probably can. It's our old friend, the C Harrier. Not kinetic this time. Oh, no, 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 no. The 48 scale offering that Tamiya gave us was frankly as bad, if not worse. It's got real bad reflection there, haven't we? Frankly, it was as bad, if not worse. Let me move it forward a bit. There we go. How's that? Hang on a sec. There we are. Not doing too well, are we, actually? Struggling a bit. There you go. That'll have to do, I think. So there we have it. They produced this in the 90s. I myself bought this when I moved into my current house. I think I bought it about a week or two, maybe a month afterwards. And then I looked at it and got it out and looked at the sprues, and I didn't actually start building it, but I just got this bad vibe, and I started looking up on the internet, and this is about, what's that, 15 years ago now. So ScaleMates wasn't so advanced, and I think I found some comment on Brit Modeler, and the comments were not very positive, and I could have attempted it, but I just got this very strong bad vibe. There are some issues with the shaping of it. The artwork, again, it's a bit like the Kinetic. The artwork is great. It looks great on the box. And many people have bought this looking at that artwork and thinking that looks brilliant. They've not quite got the cockpit right. There's a few issues. I'm not entirely sure they've got the intakes right. And I'm not talking about the photo, the artwork, I'm talking about the actual kit. And I sold mine on without actually, I'm not even sure if I opened the bags in the end. I think I just looked through the bags and thought, I read a lot of stuff, I heard a lot of stuff, and I thought, I think I'm just going to dodge a bullet here and sell it on. So I sold it on without any problem at all. But I'm very glad that I did. And that wasn't me being a genius, that was other people's advice, basically. This was an absolute donkey, and probably the worst kit. I mean, Tamiya have done some... they've done some fairly average figures. I don't mean recently, I'm talking back in the 70s, 60s, 70s. There were some of the figures weren't that brilliant, although some others were really excellent. One or two of the figures weren't that great back then. And then they really got into their stride about mid-70s, really. And to prove that point, I'll show you in a second, we've got the Tiger tank, which I think is from 73, 74. And that is, fairly ancient, and I built that only 5-6 years ago, and it's a fantastic kit. So how did they produce such a donkey in this Sea Harrier? The fit was bad, the shape of the missiles and things was wrong, they got lots of shape issues, lots of fit issues. And I think I was listening to somebody else, I don't know if it was on Phil Flores forum or some other forum I was watching, live forum a few weeks ago, and somebody said, I just don't believe that was actually done by Tamiya. I don't think they designed it. I think it might have been one of these cases a bit like the Meng Fokker triplane, where Wings designed something brilliant, somebody else implemented it badly. It could be like that, or vice versa, where somebody designed it badly. Not sure, but that is the kit in the Tamiya range to avoid, frankly, at all costs. It is a horrible, horrible thing, hateful, nobody has a good word to say about it. Lots of filler required, lots of reworking required, just forget about it. It's an absolute horror. However, I myself, as one of counting myself amongst the biggest fans of the Tamiya company and their excellent products, I encountered one kit that I expected to be really fantastic. Now, I did a review on this, and it was their... Well, first of all, I'll put this into a historical framework. In 2018, they've had a really good run. They started this sort of regeneration of making big technological strides forward in terms of the tooling. Started in 2009, and I think I did a video about this kit, the Mark 9 Spitfire 132 scale. An absolute peach. Brilliant in so many areas. It has these incredibly thinly moulded panels for the cowlings for the engine, for the Merlin engine. It's got an undercarriage you can retract or have out fixed, and then they're actually screwed in, and you can remove them, display it on a stand in flight, or have it just on its wheels. So that's really quite a breakthrough, and it's got a really strong undercarriage. It's absolutely brilliant. Great, fantastic detail throughout, and just a really beautiful, very scale-like, nicely formed, cleverly conceived. And it's sort of, you build it almost in a modular fashion. You build the engine as a separate module, and then you plug it in towards the end. It's very, very well done, very well designed indeed. Beautifully implemented, great moulding. The only thing I changed on mine was the cannons and the tyres and wheels. And I went with some resin wheels and tyres and some resin cannons. I don't remember the resin cannons. No, they're actually master model metal cannons, I should say, Hispano cannon. But apart from that, I left it standard, you know. And everybody, you know, likes this kit when they see it sort of in the flesh. I don't know how it comes across on the camera, but it's pretty nice. I'm not here to brag about my kits and how I built them. I'm just going to talk about the products, but you can see that this was great. Now, I referred to this. Oh, sorry, I've just remembered. I did do one more thing. That was the. I'm cheated on the Rolls-Royce nameplates that are on the Merlin engine there. You can just see them, can't you? Yeah, there you go. And I added a bit of the pipe work as well. It's a little bit lacking in pipes and wires. That's one thing it didn't quite go. Don't forget, it's 2009, so we are talking, what's that, 14 years ago. It didn't quite go as far as they do today in terms of that little bit of ancillary pipe work. But it was a beautiful, beautiful thing as a kit, and. Yeah, just fantastic, and it had several versions within it as well. So you could have the desert version, and so on. Now, that I refer to that kit as the game changer. I think it's when Tamiya went into this ultimate top gear that they've kind of been in ever since, with an odd hiccup, with one hiccup I can think of in particular. And then they went into the Corsair, which is just over my shoulder here, just move out of the way. I think you can just about catch the Corsair there. Another one of their 32nd scale kits. They did the Mustang, and then of course they brought out in 2014, 15, late 2014, I think they brought the Mosquito out, and the Tomcat came out, I think that was in 16, and then they brought out this later version in 19 or 20, I can't remember now, 19 I think, because people complained about the one thing they didn't do with the Tomcat, they didn't offer it with the slats down, where it was in the launch position, which a lot of people felt was not as good an offering as some of the competition, even though their ultimate engineering wasn't so good. We'll talk about engineering later. So they've been through this evolution of just slowly getting better and better. And the Mosquito had another jump in engineering quality, where another thing they introduced on that kit, which they hadn't done before, we hadn't really seen before, to get away from the seam problem on your tyres, on the undercarriage, they actually built up the treaded tyres, the big chunky treaded tyres that the Mosquito often has, in sections where you actually put them on, and there isn't a seam because they're separate sections that are pre-moulded, and then you stick them on, and it sounds ridiculous, to be quite honest, but when you see it, you see the parts and you see it done, and everyone that's actually put it together says it's a phenomenal, brilliant solution. Somebody said to me, oh yeah, but I'd still use resin. Well, no, I wouldn't use resin. That's wasting something really brilliant, and I'm not resin's biggest fan anyway, if I'm quite honest, but if ever I saw something that did not need resin, you don't need to replace the tyres on that Mosquito unless you want to do a different type of tread, you know. But that was another quantum step forward. And then in 2018, late 17, early 18, they came out with this, and this is the Messerschmitt ME BF 109 G6, and this one, I'm hoping the background isn't too disturbing, and this one was very clever. It's got these open cowls, and everything that you see that's open is actually removable, and there are actually closed cowls and everything fits with magnets, and it's an absolutely brilliant concept. They were taking the concept of the Spitfire, the big one, a little bit further, and using this idea of these magnets again, and coming up with this really beautiful little model, and everything is just removable completely and replaceable with a closed up engine, You know, if you want to do it in flight, you can do, whatever basically. But it's the way they thought it through. It has these little gondola cannons as well, and everything, and the precision of it all was just quite breathtaking. And that was a kit that was about £36 when it came out. So again, it's like they'd scaled down the quality of their engineering down to 48 scale, straight from the 32nd. Now when that came out, I was blown away by this, and I thought, I know I'm going to build it, even though I didn't need another 109. But I built it, and I was not disappointed. One of the greatest kits of all time. Although Tamiya, you know, if I was to make a list of what I think, just my personal opinion, of the ones I've built, even just the ones I've built, it would definitely be in the top 5. I think it's that good, along with that Spitfire, I guess. Now, a year later, and this is where the story goes a bit odd, and they have one of these wobbles again, which is, you know, it doesn't happen very often. I'm glad to say. But a year later, they came out with the same scale, 48 scale, and they brought us a Battle of Britain Mark 1, a Spitfire. And here it is, the very kit, which again I built. So you can see I do actually build them. And here we've got, this one has not got any squadron markings on it. It's a long story, that I've already told it before, but I have an after build review of this kit. Now this kit, I'm sorry to say, I felt very disappointed in. And there's a number of areas that are wrong on it. When I say wrong, I'm not talking about the rivet counting elements of this, but just when Tamiya suddenly just seemed to go in the wrong direction, quite frankly. So for example, the cowl, they made the cowl, the top cowl for the engine, in 2 pieces for reasons not clear, and made it very difficult to get it perfect. So you end up with a gap, a step, which shouldn't be there, and even though there may be a fluctuation in the actual cowl, it's not right. It's not right. There's no reason to have done it. So you end up with a load of work to do there. They've also gone and recessed in like a dovetail for the way that the canopy slides in. They've actually, for reasons that are not entirely clear to me, they obviously didn't feel that they could perhaps do the canopy as thin as they wanted to. So to have it in the slit, you've got 2 different top decks where the rear window is. One is if you want the canopy open, and one is if you want the canopy closed. Now, not sure why they couldn't just do it in the conventional way, but their idea was to make it look more thin. In this position, it's now in the fully open position. It actually has a step in. I don't know if I can actually show you this. If I can slide it on. No, I'm not going to break it. But if you watch my other video, which I'll put a link to, you can actually see I did actually demonstrate it more. This area has got it's got an indent, a cut-in, to make the sliding bubble canopy look more flush than it actually is, which is a bit strange, because if you think about it, it means you have to have it then fully back or fully closed. You can't have it like sometimes in the Battle of Britain they just open it a few inches to get some air in when they were waiting with their engines running. It was a hot summer, so that was a very strange thing they did. It's a bit of kidology. It's trying to create almost trying to fool the eye, but it creates quite a lot of work. Now I can understand that I mean the engineering of the parts working together was great, but they made some fundamental errors in the instructions. Really? Yes, really. And again, I do talk about this in great detail in the video. I'll put the link up to the after build Spitfire Mark 1 video. And an example in the instructions of errors was, very strangely, they have a hole drilled where one isn't necessary for all the versions, but they don't point it out to you. So if you end up and get to the end and you haven't actually filled in this hole and you've already started doing your paint jobs and things, thinking this part's going, and then you realise it's only applicable to one variant, wasn't made clear. And the second one is the opposite problem, where there's a hole for the little navigation light on the top, which you actually need to drill, and Tamiya forget to tell you about it. Now this is very unusual, and I had to go back and forth in the instructions trying to get my head around this, thinking that it must be me. It's the old, everybody says this, don't they, with Tamiya, if it doesn't go together properly, it's you, it's not them. On this occasion it's them. And there's a few little glitches in the instructions. Another thing was that they put stencils, some of the stencils were on the supplementary sheet with the decals and stencils shown, and then a few of them were shown actually in the instructions. So there's a complete disconnect between the two things, and that was very, very unusual indeed as well. So, I mean, I'm not going to go through every flaw that it had, but this had a number of flaws in it. I actually counted 10. And I got into a debate with somebody who'd also built it about 2 of them. But he didn't argue about the other 8. There was no argument. So be advised that, and the other thing that really made it stand out as being flawed, and I sound like I'm being very negative. Trust me, there's plenty of positives coming for Tamiya, don't worry. I want to just get this elephant in the room out of the way, that they're not perfect, that nobody's perfect. Even the greatest, can make mistakes. But the other thing that they did, instead of having this 109, this Spitfire was, I think, £3 cheaper the kit retail. And yet, it doesn't have an engine. And it doesn't have any cowls that you can open or have them removable like this one's got, with all the magnets and all this wonderful sort of multimedia sort of system that they created for it, which is so well done on the Messerschmitt. And on the Spitfire, they just went for a basic Spit really and didn't put an engine on it, and reminded me a little bit of the way Airfix sometimes do things and think, oh, it's a Battle Britain Spitfire, it'll just sell, we won't bother. Not like the way Tamiya normally operate, not like them at all. And it just left me a bit disappointed. It was, for something that was only £3 cheaper, it felt like it was about £12 or £15 cheaper, or should have been. It was a step back from what they'd had the year before. They went backwards, and very, very strange. Now, I was listening to Phil Flores' show, this is about a month ago I think now, I think when he had his festival, and somebody said, it may have been him, that said, and I kind of agreed with him, and he was being a bit critical of Tamiya, and I was like, at first I thought, what's he bashing Tamiya, what's this? But what he was saying was, and I can see his point, he said they've sort of plateaued a bit. You know, we were having these big leaps forward, like we had the game changer Spitfire, then we had elements within that Mosquito that were a bit of a game changer as well. You know, we had the beautiful Mustang and the Corsair, and they've just stopped doing those now. We haven't had a 32nd scale kit from them now for 6 years, I think, 6-7 years. However, that said, we did have a new step change, which I don't think he really recognised. Maybe he does now. I'm not speaking for anybody else, obviously. But I think that we did have a step change in the engineering. Not quite the breakthroughs that we had before, but when they brought out the F-35 Lightning, that, in terms of the way it goes together, I mean, it's like Bandai stroke Lego, and I don't mean that in any negative connotation whatsoever. I mean, the engineering is so precise that I showed a video when I did the review of that. This was my kit of the year 2022, and it only came out at Christmas. I only got it on Christmas Day, and I was already planning to shoot the video 2 days after Christmas, and I had to basically completely replan my video of kits of the year. Not because I got it as a Christmas gift. I mean, it would probably still got in the top 5, top 6, but it went straight in at number 1 because the engineering in it is just on a different level. And there's a little video that Tamiya produced, which I included in my video, which I'm glad I didn't get any copyright issues on, because it was only in their interest anyway. It was a real promotion for them. And it's only a video lasted about a minute, and it just shows that it going together like an animation almost. It's actually filmed, it's not animated as such, but it's just a very tightly edited film of just putting it together without any glue, and it just goes straight together. And this is what people have been saying about the Tomcat. You don't need glue. For 90% of the model doesn't need any glue. You probably should glue it, yeah. But for those that go to shows and want to take tails off and wings out, you can unclip the wings, they just pop out, the tails will pop off. Nobody else does that, okay? So it's all the more surprising, I'll come back to that more in a minute, it's all the more surprising then that we had this rather strange, very disappointing and error-strewn, errors that I never imagined I'd ever see on a Tamiya kit in the modern era, and they were in that kit. And even the fit of the wings, the fit of the wings at the normal place that you have trouble at the wing root is really good, absolutely amazing. It clicks in. But I didn't get a beautiful, perfect click fit at the back, which everybody was saying that was the bit that was supposed to just click in, you know. I mean, I ended up with a beautiful model. I mean, I'm very, very pleased with this as well. I know it's another Spitfire, but this is a Mark 1 Battle of Britain Spitfire with the sky underside. But it's a very nice model, very nice kit to buy. I do not want to put anybody off buying this kit, but I think I gave it like 9.5 out of 10. And I'm just trying to remember how I actually phrased it now when I did the actual after-build review. I think I gave it sort of 6.5, 7 out of 10, which is a big drop for a Tamiya, really. I've said this before when I do after-build reviews. There's always a drop because you will encounter something in the build. In the big Spitfire, for example, I was a little bit critical of the way, I think it's fair, of the way that Tamiya went about the exhaust stubs. They went and had the sprue contact point right in the middle of the exhaust pipe, the weld point right in the middle. Now they're supposed to have these weld points, they have them on the real plane, it's a fishtail design, and they have a weld up the middle. And instead of putting them on the back and moulding it in reverse and having them at the rear, which wouldn't matter, they put them right in the centre. And I have to say, I'm afraid that Airfix made the same error. So you can see that the person that designed the Airfix kit has never built the Tamiya one. Had he done so, I'm not sure he builds any kits, but had he done so, he would have known that that was a mistake, and you don't want, it's a nightmare cleanup. I actually got resin ones, and they were even worse. Not because of the cleanup, they were perfectly formed, but they weren't good on the actual internal plugging in, the actual fixing of them. They were not good, and they were not going to be sustainable. And I won't name where I got them from. They were from the Czech Republic, I think, but I think they were a very credible company, but they didn't pay. They paid good attention to what Tamiya didn't pay attention to, but they did the opposite problem, and they didn't get the location right, and they were awful. And I spent an entire afternoon fighting with those exhausts. About 6 hours it was. So you see, you know, that was something that was an oversight on their part, and I say Airfix have repeated that same error. So sometimes this is what happens when you get designers who are working on CAD and are not necessarily modelers themselves. Maybe that's what happened, I don't know. But the point I'm making is the big Spitfire, I think I gave it 9.5 out of 10 when I reviewed it. When I came to build it, the only issue was that exhaust issue, and just the lack of some of the wiring and piping I mentioned. So that ended up, I think I ended up giving it 8.5 out of 10 after the post-build review, you know. Which is a great score. To have built it and still say it's 8.5 out of 10. Not many kits are going to get more than that, really. 8.5 out of 10 on a long build that's quite complicated. That's a great score. So you can see that the little Spitfire, they sort of went backwards a bit. It's a bit like Great Wall Hobby have done this year. They've gone back with their Tomcat, they've done the B. And they've gone the Maverick missiles underneath. Instead of forming them in a slide moulded single piece, which is what they've been doing so beautifully with their weapons on many of their kits, they've gone back to just a conventional 2 parts, like 2 halves, you know, 2 sides shells going together. All the fins have got to be stuck up. Well, why have they done that? They've gone back. I can only assume it's for cost reasons, but that is a step backwards and very off-putting. I mean, personally, I prefer the Tamiya Tomcat of all of them. Actually, I've seen them all now. They're all pretty good. They're all pretty good kits, but it depends what you want, I suppose. If you're perhaps I've just had so many bad builds, I just couldn't be bothered faffing around with all that and that silly framework. I'm going off the subject now. Great Wall Hobby have done this weird framework on the canopy. A bad choice. You can't beat the Tamiya quality. But with the Spitfire, it was almost like perhaps a younger team of designers were given that because it was only a small one. It was only a relatively low cost kit. It was almost like it was a junior team, new designers, and they hadn't perhaps been coached quite enough on some of the finer points. You know, there were certain areas they focused on which was very good, like the front of that, the way the wing butts up. That they got spot on. But one or two other things, they over-engineered it. I think this is probably the criticism that some people make. They sometimes over-engineer things a little bit. It's not their biggest fault compared to other manufacturers, I think. But on that kit, it all went a bit Edward and a bit over-engineered and over-parted. And it's like, well, why didn't you do it properly? Instead of messing about with this canopy system and having these 2 different scuttles, why didn't they just forget all that, stick with the previous normal way of doing it, and put more emphasis on providing a Merlin engine? you know. I mean, this is the thing that seems to reoccur with Spitfires, isn't it? We've had it with Qatari with their 32nd Spitfire, which disappointed a lot of people, and is otherwise a beautiful model, yeah, beautiful model, if you want a curbside Spitfire. But again, they did the same thing. They didn't put an engine in, and it's like, oh, they'll sell anyway, you know. But you know, the more intermediate advanced models want a bit more, especially when they're paying, what was it, £100 that the Qatari came out at. But anyway, I don't want to go off being talking about other manufacturers, but I'm not doing a let's talk about Qatari because it's not fair on them. They're only just in their first year of trading, and maybe we'll do that in the future. But Tamiya basically presented something that was almost the same price as the previous year's kit and took a big step backwards. And I was quite shocked. Another thing about the moulding as well, where it's got the hatch for the radio and it's got the hinge, a little bit overdone, a little bit over exaggerated, some of the details. I mean, it's a beautiful model. It's absolutely phenomenal in the cabinet. But for what it was and for the money, there was quite a lot of things I had to go back and correct, like not telling you to drill a hole when you clearly needed to do one. And you can tell it's an error because in the instructions it goes from one frame showing you putting the fuselage sides together, clearly no hole is visible, and then in the next frame a hole appears without any indication that you should have done anything. So that's clearly a mistake. So there's a little bit of QC slippage there, which is most unlike them. Most unlike them. Anyway, I'm going to move on from the negatives. Well, there is one more elephant in the room. I'm going to have to, let's get that out of the way. I do like to get the negatives out of the way and then roll into some of the examples, really. Okay, so there is one final negative. So we've got a couple there. The Sea Harrier, I don't know what the explanation for that is. I can't even imagine, really. Again, maybe some rogue designer worked for them, or they bought in third-party design, something like that. So there, the Sea Harrier and that Spit. The Sea Harrier I would avoid at all costs. I wouldn't say that about the Spitfire though. Just be wary. Go and watch my video. I'll put a link over here at the end. I'll definitely show you the link, the after-build review, and you can have a really good watch of it. I show the instructions. I show you you're left in no doubt what the issues are. So we'll leave it at that on that. The other elephant in the room with Tamiya really is the decals. The decals. Now, I feel that they've got a little bit better now. The problem is they're very thick. You know, historically they've been very, very thick. When I was doing the Spitfire here, I did have some issues. I used on the underside, I think I used the Tamiya decals, and sure enough, I had real problems getting them to conform. There's some uneven surfaces around I think it's around where is it the gun? Yeah, it's the gun ports around there. There's a bit of like a domed hump where the ammo loads in. There's a little bit of a bulge, and this is perfect example of where the Tamiya gives you issues. So I had real problems getting it to conform, and no matter what I tried, I was using I used Microset to fix them. I used Microsol. I even tried some Tamiya X20A, which is even more powerful to use on decals. And don't try this at home, folks. You can try it at home, but last resort. It wasn't having it. It's just started breaking up. Where there was this, it just couldn't. It's just too thick and not compliant enough over this surface. So in the end, I went and got decals from Tecmod and replaced them. But bear in mind, those are from 2009. They are, nearly 15 years old. And in fairness, I've used their decals on the Spitfire and the little Spitfire and on the little ME109. And I feel they've improved. I don't think they're as thick as they used to be. I'm convinced there's been some improvement because I've not had the same levels of issue again. So I think that they know there's a problem. I think it would be nice if, I know a lot of us say this, don't we? I think it would be nice if they just went to Cartograph and bought their decals from Cartograph. But they're obviously not prepared to do that. But at least they are usable. In most, it's just the odd scenario where you have major conformability issues. It can cause problems because they are thicker. They're certainly thicker than the Cartograph ones. Thicker than the ones that Airfix use. I think they generally are Cartograph most of the time. and who else? Obviously ICM have got their own. They're fairly thin, but they're not the stickiest. So, you know, you have some strengths and weaknesses as you look around the industry in terms of decals, to be fair. Tamiya's, it's true they are thicker, but I don't, you know, for those of you that haven't used them for a while, don't close your mind to them too much, because they're definitely, I think they're definitely improving. They're getting thinner, and at least you can get them, you know, to go down, and you haven't got to peel off top films off them and all that stuff we have with Edwards. So, you know, there we go. So yeah, there's been cases where I've had one or two problems with their decals, but generally speaking, they've been fine. Now I'm going to talk about just a few of my own experiences. Kits here that I haven't built yet. The big ones around the outside I haven't built, apart from this one, the motorbike, which we'll talk about in a second. And you know, that's kind of the end of the negatives, really. So there've been one or two bad kits, two in 35 years that I'm aware of. And then we've got some of their older stuff, and I've got two kits here that are from their older back catalogue. We have got the Thunderbolt. I'll zoom in a bit because I know you like to see things, not just hear me ramble on. Got the Thunderbolt, and we've got the Tiger 1. Now this Tiger 1 is probably the... Oh, I was going to say it's the oldest Tamiya. I just realised I've actually got that Porsche 928S, which is from 1980. And I built it in 82, and that's my oldest model of all of them. It still looks quite good today, and a rattle canned it, you know, Tamiya rattle can. So some of their back catalogue, Tamiya is the one manufacturer where you can say to people, especially if it's a newcomer, they say, oh, I've only got £20. What should I? Can you please recommend something that won't put me off the hobby? And you say, you know. I mean, this Tiger, I picked that up for £15 in Hobbycraft, I think it was, and I've got the Panther as well, which is, I think that's 74. Okay, they've not got the highest detail, and they haven't got the latest sort of moulding technology, but they go together perfectly. They don't give you problems, and then you have a really good basic blank canvas. I mean, if you look at this Tiger, don't even get the old zoom to work. If you look at the Tiger here, I'll pick it up in a second. I've got, the only thing I changed on this is the tracks. It's got the fuel tracks on it, which do make it horrendously heavy. It really, it's almost like a real Tiger scaled down, because it feels like it's about 1 kilo here. It's quite heavy. So it's got the full metal tracks. So I didn't use the rubber bands, but apart from that, it's completely standard. And I did like a Normandy scheme on it, sort of a late war scheme. I'm very, very happy with it, I've got to be honest. I feel no need for another Tiger at this scale, really, even though there are some nice ones and some new ones coming out as well. It's a really, really nice model. So for £15, I don't think you're going to get any armour from anywhere better value. Likewise here, I think this costs £21, £22, and this is the wonderful, and this is probably the #1 recommendation for a beginner. This kit almost built itself. There's this old joke, isn't there? I think probably many of us are very familiar. I just got to say this, give a shout out to Andy at Andy's Hobby Headquarters in the USA in Phoenix, Arizona. He has this, his sort of, he has a logo and a sort of an intro, doesn't he, where it has like a cartoon Andy standing on top of a tank. A model tank, and then basically it shows a box, and in goes a craft knife, in goes some glue, and in goes some paint, and it shows it sort of rattles up, and then he emerges riding on this tank in cartoon form, completed. Now, people joke about Tamiya and say it's just shake and bake. You just chuck in your glue and your knife and some paint, give the box a damn good shake for 5-6 minutes, and then it's finished. Which is a ridiculous exaggeration. And there are those amongst you, some of you good friends and other modelers on YouTube that I get on very well with. And I know one or two of you, perhaps not as big a fan of Tamiya as I am, but it is a gross exaggeration. But what it does do, you know, if something goes together as well as this did, this kit was absolutely amazing. I did not expect it to be a supremely straightforward build particularly. And I built this in late 2016, so that's a few years ago, isn't it now? That's 7 years ago. But it just went together so well. Now here we've got quite complex decals which worked absolutely fine, to be honest. Plenty of microsol obviously, but it went down a treat, no problems at all. Some quite convoluted shapes there. We've got seat belts, decals, lots of things that sort of in theory on paper shouldn't really work so well. It's just a beautiful, beautiful model. And underneath, we've got all the details with your weapons, your bombs, and your rocket launchers. It's a bonny little model, to be honest. It's a bonny little model. But I didn't expect this to be anything special or anything memorable even. I thought it would just be, should be straightforward, because I've made things like the BF-109. And I think I built this not long after I built this Hawker Hurricane, the Battle of Britain Hurricane, which is actually a Harrier kit with the Tamiya in a Tamiya box, that was disappointing. I don't like Tamiya really getting together with Italeri. I don't think that's a good partner for them at all, because all it does is misleads people and maybe puts them off the Tamiya brand, and I wouldn't want that. But this has got a great interior, it's flawless, and it went together like a dream. I mean, this was much easier than the Spitfire was to build, and this is from 1994. So when you think of it like that, some of their back catalogue, there's some absolutely cracking kits. Another one is the Messerschmitt 262. They did the DO335, the file, the plane with an engine at the front and the rear, Mustang, and so on. Any of those are really good kits, and they're £20 or thereabouts, so you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. At the other end of the spectrum, of course, and zoom you in for this one. Other end of the spectrum, we have got. I'll just have to move this across for you. So there we go. We've got this beautiful motorbike, and you can probably see I've got the box just over my shoulder actually. This is the one that many of you will recall who've seen it before. I'll just give a demo, because some of you are watching this video will probably not have seen my other videos perhaps. We do get a lot of newcomers sometimes come into these particular videos. So what we have here, Tamiya RC166. So this is the motorbike that won the Isle of Man TT race in senior race in 1966, and we have here something quite remarkable. We have working chain, we have working suspension, so I won't demonstrate because I don't want to put any weight on it, but you can clearly see we have a working chain with chain links. Now this was something quite exceptional. It comes with several upgrade kits, aftermarket, Tamiya's own. One is the clutch and the forks, which I say are working suspension. So I just don't want to demonstrate everything because I'm bound to break it. The other was the wheels, which are, you can probably see by the detail on them, that they are very fine spokes. And you end up with these tiny little spokes, and the nipples that actually hold the spokes into the wheel rim, they are just so small. I mean, they're only a millimetre across. And there's a couple of great videos. One was me building it, montage, and then you can see how tiny this stuff is. And then the chain is the ultimate thing. The chain is a real chain made entirely from photo etch, and you need to polish. You have to cut it off in two places, every link, and then polish every link in these two places. And there's, I don't know, 70 links, I think, 80 links. With a lot of work, and it's just an eye destroyer. But as I've said to people before, it's really not like model making. That didn't feel like making a model. It was like I was building a watch, because these parts are so tiny, and the rivets, even all the little rivets that are on there, it was absolutely minute. And I've got pictures of it comes with a jig to assemble the chain, which was very cleverly designed, brilliantly conceived by Tamiya. One of their greatest kits, probably my best build, that is, in terms of quality. My own performance I'm talking about. It's flawless, basically. I didn't make any mistakes, which is rare. Rare. But I took my time, and it took, I don't know, 7 or 8 months, I think, in total. That was most of 2017 building that. I finished it, I think, just in the autumn. But it was quite remarkable when you see that just how small these components really are, and trying to you're actually wheel lacing like a professional wheel builder, but in miniature. And I said to my wife, I said, glass of wine? I said, no. You all know I like a glass of wine. No, thanks, Dad. No. Can I just have coffee or some tea? She was like, oh, what's wrong with you? I said, if I have a glass of wine, there's no way I'll be able to do this. There's just no way. Because you needed to be on your A game. My eyes are out on stalks working on this. And they do this similar sets for some of the other motorbikes as well. It's not just this particular model. This is the RC166, which you can see here. I'll just move my lovely rising sun. Just hoping it'll stay there. This is the model here, the RC166. So, give me a little bit for you. There you go. And absolutely, I can strongly recommend that. I give that 10 out of 10. After build, I'm talking. After build. So that's the highest rating of any kit I've ever built, basically. 10 out of 10 rating for an after build. Unbeatable, okay? Don't hesitate. Don't hesitate. But you need to be on your A game. Yeah, you're going to need to be off the beer, on the coffee. Lots of good long nights of good quality sleep, because you are going to be staring at tiny things, and you're going to be doing that for hour upon hour upon hour, and you cannot have a hangover, you can't be tired, you can't be grumpy. You'll not succeed, and that's what you end up with. So I was very proud that I actually achieved that. On some of the others, I mean, we're moving on now into the realms. I've got so many other kits I could have just wheeled out, and there are too many to show. But I've got the Messerschmitt 262 mentioned, Mosquito, which I've shown, I'm talking the 48 scale one, so big. Some beautiful kits. But the other thing that I think has really been a step forward for Tamiya in terms of quality, quite apart from this ultimate engineering, I mean, this is like an engineering experience. I felt like I'd built a real motorbike. I mean, that even has the valves in the cylinder head are present. The valve, they can see the valves. It's absolutely incredible. But the other thing they do very well, of course, is also their figures. And I've got a couple of figures here, and there are some figures in the Sheridan tank, for example. I don't think these figures are actually Tamiya. I think there was a dragon, but I did a review on these a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago now. They do some absolutely fantastic figures. They're some of the best Tamiya now. Them and ICM are right at the top, I think. Dragons are good as well. Maybe not quite as good now. I think they might have been overtaken slightly. I mean, some of the quality of the moulding on these is outstanding. So if you want to get into figure painting, then that's the place to head. I can strongly recommend them to you. And then we need to talk about things like the F-35, the Tomcat, because it's hard to. I've not built either kit, so it's actually hard to put it into words, because I've actually not had that build experience yet. But I do intend to build. I've got the other Tomcat, the non-launch position one. I'm going to build that, I think, in flight. And everybody has said, you know, you can see from the people that have built it what a pleasurable experience it was. It's not easy when you've got a complex large kit like that, but this is what I was saying about the people that say, oh, they're too easy, you know, they're too straightforward, there's no challenge. But it's not about that. The challenge is in how you how you finish it, how you paint it, how you weather it, and whether you put it in a diorama. What is great about Tamiya, and their greatest attribute, is that they don't expect you to do their job for them. They do their job beautifully, almost all the time. 99% of the time. And when you get the Tomcat, or this F-35 is the same. Not everybody's wild about the F-35, because a lot of people think it's a bit of a bland looking aircraft and it hasn't got a lot of character, which I can sympathise with that view as well. It's not my favourite plane either, but I was given that as a gift, and if it'd been anything other than Tamiya, I probably wouldn't be that excited about it. But I'd just seen that video I mentioned where it just all slots together, and it's absolute The engineering is such perfection. They do it all without glue, and it just looks like a finished model almost at the end, you know. Absolutely amazing. And things like the clear parts, the canopy, they offer a clear and a tinted version. No stone is left unturned on their part. They're basically saying, we'll do our job, we'll give you a blank canvas to build an excellent Tomcat or Spitfire, Mosquito or F-35, racing car, Sauber, or the Achilles tank destroyer, you know. But we'll do the difficult stuff in terms of getting it into a blank canvas, and then it's over to you. And the thing is, when you have them, same with this one, I think I did quite a nice paint job on that Tiger, and it was because it wasn't a 4-month battle like the Kinetic Sea Harrier. You know, well, it was a year. That was my fault though, but it was a long battle trying to get that knocked into shape. You're not going to have that struggle. You're going to put it together, and you can focus on the quality of your work and not be distracted and exhausted by the model. And I think this is why I like them. I don't mind doing hard work and putting my skill to the kits, you know, but I don't want to fight them because they can't be bothered to do the instructions properly, or they can't be bothered to mould it properly, or they don't QC it. And nobody, like in the case of some of the Edward kits, I'm afraid, the older ones, nobody seems to have tried to build them and then just put them into the market. And I heard that was actually true. Somebody that knows was telling me 1 or 2 of their kits were not tested much before they went out. You know, with Tamiya, I don't have a lot of insider knowledge about their company at all. But you sense that these are passionate model makers, the people who are responsible, the team that build things like that and like that. They know what they are doing. You know, they are young, enthusiastic, model-mad engineers, basically, and it shows. You know, and when people who are not model makers design things, sometimes they are very, very good, but they don't have that final degree of perfection. They don't have that final icing on the cake, astonishing level of perfection in the way that things actually just slot together. There is a simple joy. It's like a Swiss watch, you know, Swiss watch. There's a simple joy in seeing something that has been passionately done by an enthusiast. And the only difference with these models really at Tamiya is that these enthusiasts are being paid as professionals to do it as well. But you can tell that they're not just going into work, you know, 9 to 5 and have no interest in modelling. You know that's not the case. Maybe that was the case with that Spitfire, that one-off. But with so many of their products, you get them and you think, well, no wonder it's £30 more than the competition, because it's £30 better. It's £30 better. So you end up with, you know, you can build them in record time. I built that Spitfire in 3 months. That was one of my, in relative terms for something complicated and large, it kind of felt like one of my fastest builds in real terms. And I thought, how did I do that? I started it on the 25th of September, finished it on the 24th of December 2019. Just under, 3 months. And I'm very pleased with it. Did weathering, you know, I did a special finish, I did a special markings. And it wasn't rushed. It wasn't rushed, but it didn't fight me. It didn't fight me. So yes, I did the weathering. Yes, I did the extras. I put the aftermarket on it. Yes, the seat belts. I did the cannons. I did the nameplates. I did all the cooling. None of this was on the kit. Obviously the cannons were, because they had the standard ones, but they were much nicer ones. But I put the extra effort in because I hadn't had to fight a war just to get the thing to look like a Spitfire. And I wanted to go the extra mile. It encouraged me to be the best. I thought, well, they've done such a great job of engineering this model. I've now got to do the best job I can do. Like with the motorbike. That was my... I'm confident in my mind. That's no doubts at all that is my greatest build. It may not be weathered in the way that some other models would be. But that's not the way it was presented at the start of the races. It would be wheeled out by Mr. Honda's company, you know, perfect like that. And that's another skill set in itself, having perfect high finishes. Some of you saw my, not a Tamiya kit, but the Fujimi Le Mans Porsche from Steve McQueen, number 20, Gulf Porsche. But you also will have seen on some of my videos, which I nearly brought out here, the John Player Special Lotus 79, which is this beautiful gloss black, using Tamiya paints as well, by the way, rattle can, and it gave a perfect finish, you know. Those are a slightly different skill set, but again, you've got to raise your game to make them really work. And you know, you can see with some of the things I've shown today and previously that you can do that. But my personal point of view is this: as I say, I don't want to fight a battle. I don't want to be challenged, and you know, it's not the Argonauts movie or Clash of the Titans where I've got to go through all these trials. I just want to get that built, and then I'm going to make it look special. I'm going to make it unique and add personalised weathering and my own sort of take of it, my own. It's like a painter, isn't it? They all start with a canvas, a blank canvas. That's the same at the beginning. It's what they put on that to make it look special and unique. And with the Tamiya, you know, what they include in that box is more than good enough to make a really excellent, you know, example of the model that you could have at Telford on display, no question whatsoever, really. And I think I sometimes get baffled by people that say Edouard are better than Tamiya or Airfix are better than Tamiya. Sorry, but these people are deluding themselves. The closest manufacturers to Tamiya these days are probably Zokimura, I think. Zokimura, they're still not quite there. They're still a bit fussy and a bit overcomplicated. But we'll talk about them in a separate video. But they are close, and they do, again, it's the Japanese, they do their research. There is a diffidence and a desire to get it right. And nobody exemplifies that better than Tamiya, I think. It's no surprise I've talked in the past about my admiration for Ron Dennis, the former head of the McLaren Formula 1 team. And it was no surprise to me back in the 80s when they got together. Once I started to read about Ron, because I didn't know much about him until about 86, and I started reading articles talking about his approach and interviews. And then about 5 or 6 months after I started reading this stuff and becoming quite interested in the way he went about things, a perfectionist that strives for the very best he can do. He's a bit OCD and da. And then 6 months later they announced that they were getting into bed with Honda, and excuse me, and they were going to have these Honda engines, this snatched from under the noses of Williams, who already had them. And I was not at all surprised, because I could see that Ron Dennis's character was very like the Japanese, and that they would have quite a harmonious relationship compared to the one he would have with other people, you know. And it was clearly destiny, that, you know. And it's a bit like that with these guys, I feel. With Tamiya, it's a bit like Honda, you know. They are going to charge you what it requires for them to make a profit, which is fair enough. There's nothing wrong with making a profit. I don't think they overcharge you. I don't think they're overpriced. You do get a lot in the kits. The only things in the kits that they do put in that I'm not always that warm about, some of their I should have mentioned this earlier, some of their photo etch can be very thick and quite hard, a bit like the Decals. They seem to have an affinity for things being very strong and quite thick, and their photo etch is noticeably thicker than most of the photo etch that you get aftermarket from people like Edouard. But other than that, they provide everything you need in that kit, and this is a very important point that I haven't yet got to, especially with both the armour and the aircraft, they provide you with figures. And the quality of these figures, I mentioned about the soldiers, the quality of these figures, it's not like we see from other people. I was a little bit surprised, if I'm honest. A few weeks ago we had the Airfix Gannet arrived, and it had pilot figures that were not good. Let's be honest, they're not good. They're old school, clearly upscaled from, I don't know, 72nd scale, I think, and looked melted. And if you compare them to what's in these boxes, wow, it's like they were manufactured by a different species, really. These are crisp and sharp, and they've got brilliant detail. They look like the right palette for the aircraft. You know, in the case of the figures in the tank, they've got some astonishing details in there, and they've got sunglasses and wristwatches on their wrists. Really excellent, well observed and well sculpted figures. You know, if you're going to do it properly, really. Don't want to go down the route of talking about Airfix, Revell and the others, because we've done that already, but this is what distinguishes Tamiya. You know, this is what differentiates them. You know, this kit's got the shooter, the deck officer, who's releasing the plane, telling him when to go for the catapult, and that's another really nice figure that they've created. They're mouth-watering. You look at these figures and you think, well, they're so well moulded. You think, well, I'm going to have to really do a good job with these figures. I mean, I try and do a fairly decent job. I'm not the best figure painter when it comes to things like eyes, but I think I'm quite decent at it. You know, I'm okay. But when you see them and they're so well manufactured, you think, well, I've got to make an effort here. I've got to put some energy and some focus into making them as good as I can. And that, for me, is what summarises Tamiya. There is such a pleasure in seeing something done so well that it raises me up. It's not, oh, well, they've done the job for me, I'll just do it, and it'll still look decent even if I don't give it 100%. I think a lot of us are like me. I think that you get a kit and you think, you know, this has been brilliant, I'm going to make a bit more effort, a bit more weather and a bit of a wash, I'm going to put a bit of detail in here, highlighting a bit more. Perhaps those figures could do with a little bit of another revisit. It elevates you, it motivates you, because you know that if you put the effort in and you can just throw a bit more skill, a little bit more effort at it, they will pop, you know, they will look better, they will really come alive. And it doesn't matter whether it's a motorbike or a tank or a plane or a racing car, whatever it is. I mean, I've got the racing car, I just mentioned this because this is another one that's quite interesting, because this is the Sauber Mercedes that won the Le Mans Sports Car Race in 1989 and won the championship, actually. Number 63. Now, I built that. I was just talking briefly, I mentioned about the Le Mans sports car, the Gulf Porsche, number 20, Steve McQueen drove in the movie. I didn't have much fun building that Fujimi kit. I've built a couple of theirs now. And every time I build one of these, I've got the Toyota GT86 sports car, the model of the car I used to own. I used to actually drive the real thing. And when you look at their cars and motorbikes, they do it better than anybody. Really, they do. And I know that the only tricky part of that build for me is going to be getting the finish right on the silver, because I know that it's going to go together properly. I'm not going to be battling with warped clamshell bodywork that won't go together like on the Fujimi was. I had quite a lot of issues with that, it's got to be said. And this is the thing, you know, I know that if I raise my game, I mean, people looked at that Porsche, and a lot of you who watched the video, I did an after build video and I did a short montage, and people said, wow, you've really nailed this, it looks, but it wasn't a satisfying build, and it's not 100% in my eyes, whereas something like this from Tamiya, it'll be knockout, you know, it's going to knock it out of the park. And I suppose, to summarise, a good way of rounding off this talk really is, what are we building the models for? Are we building them to please other people? Are we building them because we enjoy the experience of building? Do we build them because we just want a model of that subject? It's probably a variety of these sort of reasonings for a lot of us. I want the subject in my cabinet, but I want to enjoy the journey. I really do want to enjoy the journey. I don't expect it to be easy. I don't expect the Andy's Hobby Headquarters, put it in the box with the glue and the paint and shake it and it'll be done. I don't want somebody to do it for me, you know, otherwise I could go and buy ones like Phil Flory used to sell. He used to do professional model building, you could buy them off him. People like that do it all the time. I don't want that. That wouldn't appeal to me. I want to do it, and then when people look at it and say to me, I mean, even just in the last few days I've had some very nice comments from many of you. Thank you very much about the Tacom Sea Wolf and Sea Dart that I recently finished. I've got some much more positive feedback than I was expecting, actually, so I'm really grateful for that. But I did that, and that was a little bit tricky at times. There was parts of it that was a bit frustrating, But it looks great. The finished thing looks great. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't like the Sea Harrier. It wasn't absolutely painful. But with these, I am going to be doing a couple of these now. So I've said I'm going to be probably working on the Tomcat. I'm going to do the Mosquito, the big Mosquito, because that's going to be a joy, I think, really. And it's going to be, I don't know how to explain it. I think that some of you will understand that you've been through some really horror builds, and then you open the box and that, and it feels like Tamiya is on my side, and it feels like it's almost like I'm working in a team, really.